Take advantage of the time B2J the podcast is on hiatus. Look us up on Spreaker Radio, Facebook, and iHeartRadio. We could never come back and we'd still be Stockton, California's #1 podcast. Thank you all for your support. B2J out.
Baby, I could use some help. But hell, you want something done right? You gotta do it yourself.
B2J the podcast and Big Red's Rockin' Podcast is brought to you by Big Red Productions, a Dub 9 Stockton, California original broadcast and podcast distributor since February 2016. The actions and views of the hosts do not directly coincide with Big Red Production, but that of those who open and insert their foot in their own mouth. We're not perfect. These aren't your mama's podcasts. Hit the intro. Roll.
Last week, Rook with the band.
Oh yeah. What the fuck?
What's up, everybody? The date, September 24, 2018. This is episode #1 of Big Red's Rockin' Podcast, and I am Big Red of B2J, the podcast fame, hailing proudly out of the real Sin City, the real concrete jungle, the best town there is, was, and ever will be, the Port City, Mudville. I'm talking about Stockton, California, and I'm your host, the Merc behind the mic, yours truly, the Big Red, James Big Red Himley. This is going to be a fun episode, and I said we were coming out swinging, and I'm not lying. Lots of fun segments ahead, but first, this being the inaugural episode, I thought it would only be proper if I told you guys a little bit about myself. Alright? I have a dream, and that dream has an end game. This is still very much the beginning of my story. Alright? So, I'll tell you about my end game, but first let me tell you why I'm doing this. Alright, I'm doing this because I feel my opinion matters in these realms: MMA, pro wrestling, hard rock music, movies, TV shows. Well, mostly movies, let's be honest. But why does my opinion matter in these realms? So, well, MMA, I would say MMA is the sport that I married. Okay, pro wrestling was the sport that I fell in love with, okay? Hard rock music very much goes with both of those things, alright? Movies, well, that's where it all started. It started with me, the first movie that I ever saw in the movie theaters was Kickboxer, okay? Which is very much a fight movie, which is very much a MMA movie, choreographed MMA movie, but MMA nonetheless. Choreographed. Well, let's be honest. Professional wrestling is choreographed. They very much put themselves in danger, but you know, the objective is not to hurt yourself, all right? So, and not to hurt the person that you're working with. That's the objective in professional wrestling, and to put on one hell of a good ass show. So there you go. Movies, you know what I'm saying? So it's the the world's longest male soap opera is WWE programming, right? So there you go. MMA though was the sport that I fell in love with. My cousin Justin Hudson got me into MMA, and since 2001 I have seen 90% of every UFC event. All right, so deep cuts. I'm telling you, it's deep cuts for me with MMA. Professional wrestling, well, that was my first love. All right, what got me into professional wrestling was the first VHS tape that I rented, that I can remember renting at wherever I rented movies back in the 90s, probably Blockbuster, was probably WrestleMania 6 on VHS. And it was probably to get me hyped for what was inevitably the first pay-per-view that I remember my dad ever buying for me, which was WrestleMania 12. And WrestleMania 6 got me into professional wrestling in a big bad way, okay? So it got me into it because it was the Ultimate Warrior versus the Immortal Hulk Hogan. Nobody could beat Hulk Hogan, especially not on the grandest stage of them all, WrestleMania, right? Not true. It was champ versus champ. Intercontinental Champion Ultimate Warrior defeated Hulk Hogan. And that got me so wrapped up into it. So much so, well, got me back on board WrestleMania 12. Get me back onto what I'm trying to talk about. WrestleMania 12, Triple H got squashed by the Ultimate Warrior in WrestleMania 12. It was epic. And to see where Triple H is now, it's just crazy. So, and the main event, Shawn Michaels cashing in on his boyhood dream against Bret Hart in an Iron Man match. Went into overtime, and Bret Hart ended up losing to Shawn Michaels by 1 pin to none. And that 1 pin came at the 11th hour. So there you go. And I was wrapped up into it, and Shawn Michaels came down from the rafters. It was amazing. So, hard rock music. Well, why hard rock music? Because for as long as I can remember, I've only ever really gotten wrapped into heavy metal, hard rock music. And the baddest ass people in all of combat sports come out to hard rock music. So there you go. The Game comes out to Motorhead. Aleister Black has the sickest theme music right now, and I don't know what the band's name is, but I love the song, and I love his entrance music, and it's glorious, for lack of a better word. Alright? So, back to MMA real quick, because I don't think I went hard enough in the paint. My first favorite wrestler was my first favorite MMA fighter was Evan Tanner. That's how deep my cuts go, okay? My first favorite fighter was Evan Tanner. Then it was Frank Mir before he got into the motorcycle accident. And then, who else was my favorite fighter? George St. Pierre is currently my favorite fighter, but he's semi-retired. So Anderson Silva, another one of my favorite fighters. So anyways, deep cuts, man, I'm telling you. I have 20 years of fandom, okay? But if I didn't sell it enough, I was in Arco Arena April 24th, 2010 with my dad, where I witnessed Demetrius Johnson lose unanimous decision victory to Brad Pickett. Chad Mendes destroyed a jobber. Mitsugaki defeated Ronnie Yaya. Anthony Pettis defeated Alex Alexis in Anthony Pettis' origin story, where he defeated him by a triangle choke, where he inevitably won his UFC title by defeating Benson Henderson via triangle choke. Okay, Leonard Garcia defeated Korean Zombie by bullshit decision, but he defeated him. All right, Chan Sung Jung. All right, the Korean Zombie. What the fuck? Scott Jorgensen fought that night. Some jobber. Manville the Anvil Gamburian knocked out Mike Brown. Benson Henderson guillotine choke Donald Cerrone in the first round. And the finale was Jose Aldo leg kicking the hell out of Uriah Faber en route to his title. So I was there. I was in that building. Okay, and then if it's not deep cuts enough, I've been in an MMA fight. And if it ain't deep cuts enough, train in a cage. And if you didn't hear me, I've been in an MMA fight. So there you go. My favorite movies vary by genre and time of year, and you're going to see how I include my love for movies in this podcast, but no spoilers, alright? And if I'm not a nerd enough for you, I go to Stockton Con every year. And I try to make at least one movie premiere a year, which is usually the Star Wars movie around Christmas time, because that's my thing. I go to the movies every Christmas with my family. So, I love movies. I love pro wrestling. I love hard rock music. I love MMA. But what's the end game? What's the end game? I want to have the ultimate entertainment experience in Stockton, California. I want to have this plot of land that I've been praying for so long, you know, where I could have live podcasts, live music, top-notch arcade, drive-in movie theater, playground, if I'm getting a little too carried away. And if it's not enough for you, I want to have a little dance hall, and I want to have a bowling alley. So there you go. That's that. That's my dream. Some might call it a pipe dream, but hey, I've been podcasting for 2 years. I've been in the game for a minute, and I've already made it to iHeartRadio. So, you know, I'm living the dream, you guys. And I'm doing it. Alright, so time to go into Big Red's locker room, the first segment of the show.
Mother's on it! Come on, a little hard, champ. In the face, come on! Again, come on, champ, you're so bad!
What can you find in Big Red's locker room? Well, first you're going to find a poster. That poster is of the upcoming Raw. And what's happening in the upcoming Raw? Well, what's next for the Shield? Huh? Melbourne, Australia Super Showdown is on its way. And Roman Reigns and the Shield will be facing Braun Strowman, Dolph Ziggler, and Drew McIntyre. Alright? What's happening on Raw? Well, Ziggler and McIntyre will be defending their titles and more than most likely beating the Revival. Okay. Where does Nia Jax fit into the women's division? Possible feud with Alexa Bliss developing hot ... I hope not. Ronda Rousey, the Raw Women's Champion, and the Bella Twins will be going up against the Riot Squad at Melbourne, Australia's Super Showdown. But where does that fit in on Raw? Well, Brie Bella will be taking on Ruby Riott. Bobby Lashley will also be taking on Elias. Chad Gable and Bobby Roode, the Gable and Roode connection, I guess, is headed where? well, they got a feud going on with Connor and Victor of the Ascension, and well, that might have been the most I've